The World Economic Forum. So let's kickstart the show with that. And to begin with, let's go straight across to Shireen Bhan's special interaction with ArcelorMittal's Aditya Mittal in Davos. He finally breaks his silence on the Essar deal and the delay and his disappointment in the entire process. However, he is confident that going forward, the process is going to go through. Take a look.
Well, we're in the midst of a bitter corporate battle back in India, and joining us now to discuss the implications for ArcelorMittal's bid for Essar Steel is Aditya Mittal. Aditya, I appreciate you joining us. As I said, you're not a stranger to bitter battles. We've seen one play out a little more than a decade ago for Arcelor. It took 5.5 months to wrap that up. What's your own sense of how things are panning out? Do you think that the IBC process is being frustrated by some individuals?
Shireen, that's a great question. Look, our focus is value maximization through a rule-based process. I think that's what we followed. The process of Essar Steel has taken a bit longer than we all anticipated. The IBC suggests 270 days for the whole process to be wrapped up. It's been about 540 days. But I think we're coming to a good conclusion. There was a judgment this morning as well at the appellate court requesting Ahmedabad court to hurry up.
By the 31st of January?
Yeah, exactly. So that's not too long ago. That's not too far away.
But do you think that, this NCLT and NCLAT is the first installment? The real battle is going to play out in the Supreme Court. Are you prepared for that?
So we've been to Supreme Court, right? We went to Supreme Court back in September.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court passed a judgment, and we complied with the judgment. And as a result, the COC took a decision, and the process has moved on. I think the Supreme Court heard the case. They went through it in a lot of detail. So the Supreme Court is very aware of what this process is about. So going back to Supreme Court, I think the judgment will be repeated. So for us, it's not a matter of concern.
Let me ask you about whether you were surprised about State Bank of India's decision to put that 15,500 crores of the Essar Steel exposure on the block. Of course, the deadline for that has now been extended. How do you see that playing out and what the implications could be on the IBC process?
I think that's another demonstration why the process needs to come to a logical conclusion and a speedy conclusion, right? The state banks are losing 17 crores a day. Okay, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for India. They can utilize those funds, redeploy it to enhance liquidity in the country, redeploy it, give loans, and boost growth. Yet instead, because of all of these actions and delay tactics, they're requesting bids at an 18% discount to our offer, right? 18% discount. That's a lot of money that's being put on the table. And that's why it's very important that the core processes and the rule-based IBC is implemented, because otherwise, in the big picture, the country is losing a lot of value.
You talked about value maximization, and I go back to the statement that came in from Essar Steel saying that their offer is in line with the objective of the IBC to enhance value maximization, not just for lenders but also for operational creditors, and their offer is better than the resolution plan that was cleared, 12,000 crore rupees better. How do you respond to that?
So that's very interesting because when you read the media reports, the first offer that they made was 20,000 crores, right? So if it wasn't for our...
Now in excess of 54,000
No, but if you go back to day one, it was 20,000 crores, right?
But I'm talking about now the revised offer.
So let's talk about the revised offer. You have to follow a rule-based process, and that's what my answer was going to be. Because if you do not follow a rule-based process, companies like us and others will not participate if there's a promoter bidding for a company. Then what you would have seen is that Essar Steel would have been sold to New Metal / Ruias for 20,000 crores. That would have been a massive loss. And then future bad loans, future companies which are not able to service the debt, the promoters will come back, buy it back at a discount. This will demonstrate that you don't have to follow the rules. So it's not just about our case.
So you believe that this is a subversion of the IBC?
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because the IBC process was very clear, courts were very clear. There were chances to submit bids. I mean, we all know this is not a process we started yesterday, right? It's almost 2 years. And so now only the COC has decided, they've chose the winning bid to come in at the last moment. I mean, I don't even think the bid is financed. There's no guarantees. There's no penalties, because in the IBC process, you provide guarantees. If you forfeit your bid, all of those things are there. So it's an unfortunate development, and clearly the courts will take the right decision. I have a lot of faith in a rule-based economy as India, and that should be logical.
That's the point of view of Essar, but that point of view has also been somebody like Sajjan Jindal, also perhaps an interested party in some senses, or at least was in the previous avatar of the bid with New Metal. What do you make of Sajjan Jindal saying that look, the Essar family should get the right to go through with this if they can finance it?
Look, I think all promoters have the right to buy back their companies by paying back 100 cents on the dollar, but not 540 days later, right? They should first of all not allow the company to go under, right? That's the first requirement. And if the company has gone under, try and find a solution as soon as you can. First submit a bid of 20,000 and then, mess around with the process, I don't think is a promoter trying to act in the best interest of creditors.
Is there a possibility at all, and we saw this play out as far as Arcelor is concerned, that there was a last-minute sweetening of the offer? Is that a possibility that you would consider, given the fact that Essar continues to bring up the fact that there is a 12,000 crore rupee difference between what they're offering and your offer?
Look, I think we've gone through 540 days. I think what the banks are really focused on is coming to the right conclusion.
But is this even a possibility, a revised offer on your part?
There's no need, right? The COC has taken a decision. We're in the courts to approve the resolution plan. So at this point in time, I think our bid, if you just looked at the scoring when the bids were open, was far in excess of anything on the table. And today the banks are willing to sell at a discount our bid. So I think the discussion is not about the bid. The discussion is really about
the
process, making sure that the employees of Essar Steel have a clear future, making sure that we can make the investments, improve the business, grow the business, and bring in our capabilities to India. Your plans for India rest on what finally happens as far as Essar Steel is concerned. But that's also sort of put a spanner in the works for your other plans. For instance, with the agreement with SAIL, and I again point out, if the process were not to go through as per your expectations, what happens to ArcelorMittal's plans for India? So SAIL is linked to Essar Steel. Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah, I'm talking about your plans for India, outside of Essar Steel, if this were not to go through. So that's not a possibility as far as I'm concerned. You're not even willing to look at that possibility. Look, I believe that India is a rule-based economy, and that is why the country will continue to develop and progress. And if you look at the rules are very simple. The IBC process is designed to maximize value within the rules of process, and that's what we have followed. But on that SAIL agreement, is the definitive agreement anywhere close to being inked? So the whole team and all of us have been very focused on Essar Steel. So we need to arrive at the end conclusion of that process, and then obviously we're going to turn our energies to SAIL. You keep stressing on the fact that instead of 180 days, it's already been 540 days. We should hear from the NCLT by the 31st of January, and then the NCLAT perhaps sometime in February. What's the timeline that you're now working with? And again, I mean, the possibility of going back to the Supreme Court is a valid one. I think the timeline that everyone is working towards is to complete it in this fiscal year, Indian fiscal year, which is end of March. If it does go through and it goes through in your favor, which you absolutely believe it will and you feel certain that it will, what next then as far as Essar Steel is concerned, your plans for the company? Yeah, so that's a great question. And that's really what I want to talk about. So first of all, at ArcelorMittal we pride in terms of safety culture, safety performance. Even though we're about 6% of the global steel production, 2/3, according to WSA, World Steel Association, 2/3 of the world's safest sites are ArcelorMittal facilities. So clearly we want to bring safety practices. Essar already does a great job, but I think we can bring some capability there. We also want to have a positive impact on the environment. We think we have very strong environmental practices, and we can implement that. The third area that we want to focus on is some of the capex has not been spent. Over time because of all the financial difficulties. So we want to accelerate and spend that capex. That includes completing a pelletizer, a coke battery, making sure Hazira achieves its design capacity. You see, Hazira is an 8.5 million ton facility today, and it's not shipping that amount of steel. So that's the first order of business: safety, health, environment, completing the capex, making sure Hazira achieves design capacity. The next order of business is looking at growth. So we believe we have expansion possibility at Hazira, right? We can take Hazira to up to 12.5 million tons. So that's very exciting, how to plan that growth. We also have to examine changes in its technology. Because as you know, Hazira has been very gas dependent, which has been one of its weaknesses. And we want to bring in blast furnace technology and coke making capability so its gas dependence reduces. And that will improve its cost performance. So in the future, it should not enter into compressed margins when the steel industry goes down, because gas prices are not linked to the steel business. And then we would also look at the East Coast assets. You see, the Eastern Coast assets, if you look at Paradeep has good potential. And we could examine setting up a greenfield facility in Paradeep. So for us, the acquisition of Essar is very exciting. It's a great steel asset. You have to give credit to the Ruias and the family for building such a facility. It's a coastal site. It's a large-scale site. It has 2 sites on the East Coast, which are also coastal, 2 pellet plants, 2 pipelines, 2 pelletizers, 8.5 million ton design capacity. So a lot of credit for building something like that in the Indian context. But clearly there's an opportunity to take it forward, and that's what we're interested in.
So, you talked about the plans that you have for Essar Steel as and when this transaction is concluded in your favor. What kind of investments are we talking about additionally?
So we have not publicly disclosed the level of investments, but I think you can
give me some sense.
Yeah, it's at least a few $1 billion of investment, both in terms of catch-up capex, as well as fixing the gas issues and achieving design capability at Hazira and taking it beyond that.
So if this were to get done by the first half of this year, and you hope that at least as far as the court process is concerned, March 31st, that's exactly what I said. How soon, will you be able to sort of take over and get things going as and when the deal is done?
So normally it's very fast, right? We have all the approvals. We have competition approvals. We have the facilities. We have the money. I saw that when Tata got the approval from the courts on Bhushan Steel, they closed it within 3 days. So I think the whole thing will move very fast. We also have Indian competition approval, right? We have CCI approval. And so I expect it to be closed within days of the court finally approving our resolution plan. We have our team ready. It's a joint venture with Nippon Steel. Nippon Steel is another great steel company, largest in Japan, among the largest steel companies in the world. And together we can bring and enhance all the strategic plans I spoke about. So we can bring value-added technology to the country. We can bring automotive products and solutions for the growing automotive industry. We can provide further solutions in terms of the construction segment. And we should not lose focus that we can also provide capability on how to have a minimized carbon footprint as that becomes a bigger and bigger issue as climate change is upon us now.
Has there been any conversation with the Ruias over the last 40 days on this matter at all?
India is a very small country at the end of the day, right?
Maybe not directly, but indirectly?
No, I think, look, we're always talking. I know the family very well. As I said earlier on, I think it's very impressive what they have built. I think now there's a chance of someone else to come in and take it to the next level.
If things were not to go your way, would it be the end of the story and the end of the road as far as your plans for India are concerned?
Look, it can never be the end, right?
Greenfield assets, I mean, you've been trying for very, very long.
Look, from our perspective, and I'm at the risk of repeating myself, but clearly we have followed the rules. The country will flourish and develop if the rules are followed. That's how you take a developing country into a developed country, right? If you can't have a rule-based economy, it's very hard for investors both within the country and outside the country to invest. And so that's our basis. And so I don't think there's any reason to speculate on what happens if we don't succeed. I think
there is no plan B.
There is no plan B. We're going to succeed.
Well, Aditya, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV. And best of luck.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time here.
Right.
Well, that's Aditya Mittal talking about the big battle that's currently underway for Essar Steel. For now, I hand it back to you.
Well, that is Aditya Mittal breaking his silence and talking about his plans for Essar Steel. There seems to be no plan B. They are confident of Essar Steel coming to ArcelorMittal. Moving on and talking of Essar Steel case, we told you first, and it's official now, SBI has extended the deadline for sale of its Essar Steel loans. The lender has extended the deadline for the submission of bids to 30th of January and has pushed the e-bidding deadline to the 11th of January. Remember, SBI has a total exposure of about 15,000 crore rupees. Here's the big investigative story of today. There's fresh trouble for Chanda Kochar, the former managing director and CEO of ICICI Bank. The Central Bureau of Investigation has registered an FIR against Chanda. Her husband Deepak Kochar, who's the MD of NU Power in Aurangabad. Utkarsh Atwedi is here from outside the Videocon headquarters in Bandra, Mumbai. Utkarsh, take us through what transpired. You've gone through the FIR in detail.
And there are allegations that there was some quid pro quo which happened while some investments in Deepak Kochar's NU Power happened, worth of 64 crore rupees by Videocon. But what is more interesting in the FIR at this point of time is because we have been really hearing about that after the exit of Chanda Kochar, there's not a lot of threat for ICICI Bank. But if you read the FIR carefully, it also takes a lot of other names. The FIR says that the loans which were disbursed of around 1,500 crore rupees were sanctioned on various dates by various committees having senior officials of ICICI Bank and members, namely Sandeep Bakshi, K. Ramkumar, Sonjay Chatterjee, as well as KV Kamath. So the other names, the other present serving names of ICICI Bank also a part of the FIR. They are not in the alleged list, but if a CBI really thinks of improving the scope and expanding the scope of investigation, then the current employees of ICICI Bank can also be in trouble. As we speak at this point of time, there are raids going on in 4 locations in Mumbai, 2 offices of NU Power, 1 in Nariman Point, 1 in BKC, and 2 offices of Videocon Industries, 1 right behind me. That's the headquarters of Videocon at this point of time in Mittal Chambers. Now, obviously, this whole process has been going from morning. All the investigation teams are at locations since morning. They'll be investigating till late night. But what we'll have to really look at from the FIR and from what they get here is the way ahead, because once the investigations, once the searches are done, there'll be more investigations, and we can really see summons being served out to these top officials, and let's see how does this whole investigation go through. Remember that the FPE was filed a year back.
Yeah. Absolutely, Utkarsh. Thanks for taking us through that and breaking that down for us. Utkarsh is tracking these raids, and we'll keep getting him back as and when there are developments on that story. But a quick look at the last rate action today. After a steep fall in yesterday's session, markets took a breather and ended with slim gains. So the Nifty saw a sharp recovery in the last hour to end just shy of the 10,850 mark. Sensex also ended just below the 36,200 mark. Banks ended flat with a positive bias, led by sharp uptick seen in Yes Bank after the story on Ravneet Gill being appointed the CEO of the company. Mid-caps underperformed today. That index ended about 0.3% in the red. Here's the big story from the banking space. Yes Bank is set to get its first non-promoter CEO from the 1st of March. Ravneet Gill, who is currently heading Deutsche Bank's operations in India, will take over the corner office at Yes Bank. The bank stock, in fact, rallied 9% even after reporting a worsening of asset quality in the third quarter due to a 2,500 crore rupee exposure to IL&FS. Ritu Singh is here with the details. Ritu, a new era very clearly at Yes Bank. You've been tracking the story. Give us what Ravneet Gill will now bring to the table and a quick look through on the Q3 numbers and the areas that stand out in terms of concerns.
Well, a lot of relief coming in, and you saw that rally on the stock also today after this announcement was made. Ravneet Singh Gill, who's the current India head of Deutsche Bank, is set to take over from Rana Kapoor as the MD and CEO of Yes Bank. Yes, he will be the first non-promoter CEO for the bank. In fact, for the first new CEO really to take over from the bank for the first time since Rana Kapoor co-founded the bank, back in 2004. Ravneet Gill, of course, brings with him about 28 years of experience in banking. He's no novice to this industry, close to 3 decades across different sectors in banking. His last role, of course, was at Deutsche Bank, where he joined in 2012 and has been with the bank ever since. His appointment, however, does leave some portions unanswered, if I were to put it like that. 1st of March is when his appointment is going to come into effect, but in the interim period between Rana Kapoor stepping down on the 31st of January and Ravneet Gill taking over, the bank's board will be meeting on the 29th, which to watch out for to decide the interim transition strategy. Now, whether they seek an extension for Rana Kapoor, or they appoint an interim CEO to carry on the operations before Ravneet Gill takes over as the MD and CEO, that is something that will be decided and will become clear in that 29th of January meeting. However, there are indications that the bank is likely to lean towards appointment of an interim CEO before Gill takes over. But that aside, yes, the third quarter was a bit of a miss, from what the street was expecting.
Yeah.
The profits largely took a hit because of that 2,500 crore rupee Island Fest exposure, which is why, you saw the profits coming below what was expected. But yes, I think the bigger news for this quarter, of course, is the appointment of a new CEO.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ritu, for joining in with that. From one crucial appointment to another, Indigo has appointed Ronojoy Datta as its CEO with immediate effect. Anu Sharma is here with details. Anu, firstly, take us through a background of this. And Ronojoy Datta was appointed as a consultant very recently. So how would the transition be now?
Right. As we know that Indigo has appointed Ronojoy Datta as its Chief Executive Officer with effect from today. And remember, this is just a month ago, he was appointed as the principal consultant for the market leader to frame a 5-year business plan. And we know that Datta is, of course, not new to the aviation space. He has been with the United Airlines for nearly 17 years, also served as its president for nearly 4 years. He also headed Air Sahara at one point from 2004 to 2006, and he has also been a strategic advisor for Air Canada, Hawaiian Airlines. So this announcement only makes sense for Indigo at a time when it is planning to go aggressive on its international plan. Even yesterday, the management was pretty clear that a large part of capacity induction for 2019 will be the larger and long-range AC-21 Neos, and the first priority of these planes will be to fly international. So now with the entire team of Indigo having a substantial amount of global experience, I think the sign is pretty evident that it is going to be overseas rapid expansion for Indigo this year. Back to you.
Okay, Anu, thanks for joining in with that. But completely out of time on this edition of After the Bell. Lots of stories to track, and we'll be back in 30 minutes with Reporter's Diary. But stay tuned. Markets Today Talk Back will take all the market action on the other side forward and get you trade ready for tomorrow.